There are many places in the world where one might reasonably expect to find the four horsemen of the apocalypse. A battlefield, for instance, a plague-ridden city, a motorway service station at 2 a.m. But on the particular Tuesday when the world's doom was officially scheduled, the horsemen were instead sitting in a rural Somerset pub called the Tucker's Graveyard, arguing over cider. The Tucker's Graveyard was the sort of pub that had existed since the invention of roofs, and possibly before. It leaned slightly to the left, smelled faintly of wood smoke and wet dogs, and served a cider so potent that it had been banned in 3 counties and 1 small principality. This cider was called Bumble Rumble. It was brewed in a shed behind the pub by a man named Colin, who had once used it to strip paint off a tractor. The tractor had never been the same since, and neither had Colin. War slammed his empty tankard on the table hard enough to make the cutlery jump. "Another!" he bellowed, which caused 3 locals to flinch, and 1 to reconsider his life choices entirely. Death, who was sipping his cider with the caution of someone who had seen what it did to souls, shook his head. "We should pace ourselves. Last time Pestilence had 2, he started a small medieval outbreak in the toilets." It cleared up. Pestilence muttered defensively. "Yes," Death said, after I intervened personally. Famine, who was sipping his cider like a man trying to negotiate with it, added, "Besides, we're supposed to be discussing the apocalypse schedule." War waved a dismissive hand. "Plenty of time for that. It's not till next month." Death opened his mouth to reply, but at that exact moment, Pestilence attempted to open a fresh bottle of Bumble Rumble. This was a mistake. The cork shot out of the bottle with the force of a ballistic missile, punched a hole through the ceiling, and continued its ascent with the enthusiasm of a creature fleeing for its life. 30,000 feet above Somerset, a passing dragon, a large, scaly, and rather sleepy specimen named Trevor, was minding his own business, thinking about roast sheep. The cork hit him squarely between the eyes. Trevor had just enough time to think, "Oh, not again," before losing consciousness and plummeting earthward like a scaly meteor. Back in the pub garden, a tremendous crash shook the picnic tables. War blinked. "Did anyone order dragon?" Death peered out the window. "Oh dear, that's going to complicate the insurance." Trevor lay sprawled across the garden, snoring smoke rings and flattening a decorative wooden wheelbarrow. A small sign beside him, now bent, read, "Beer garden. No flying creatures after 9 p.m. The locals barely reacted. This was Somerset. Dragons were considered only slightly more disruptive than tractors. Pestilence looked at the shattered bottle in his hand. "Should we apologize?" "No," Death said firmly. "We finish our drinks, we pretend nothing happened, and we leave before someone asks us to help move him." War raised his tankard. "To holidays!" The others clinked their glasses. And that was when the sky cracked open like a badly handled creme brulee and a booming celestial voice declared, "Attention, the apocalypse is scheduled for Thursday. Please prepare accordingly." The horsemen stared upward. War groaned. "Oh, we haven't even booked the hotel yet." Death rubbed his temples. "I swear, if this ruins Benidorm." The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse were not, contrary to popular belief, constantly galloping across burning horizons and smiting things. That was only on Mondays. The rest of the week, they were overworked civil servants of cosmic calamity, drowning in paperwork, existential dread, and the occasional complaint letter from mortals who felt their plagues were a bit much. So, when the celestial announcement declared that the apocalypse was officially scheduled for Thursday, the horsemen reacted in the only reasonable way. They decided to go on holiday. "Benidorm," War declared, stabbing a finger at a glossy travel brochure. "Sun, sand, cocktails, chaos, perfect." Death peered over his skeletal spectacles. "I don't tan." "No one tans," Pestilence said. "They crisp." Famine nodded solemnly. "I could do with a crisp." Death sighed. "We can't just leave. The apocalypse is coming." War grinned. "Exactly. It's coming. Not here yet. We've got time." Death considered this. He had been working non-stop since the dawn of existence. He hadn't had a proper break since the Black Death, and that hardly counted because he'd been on call the entire time. "Fine," he said, "but we must leave Agro in safe hands." All 4 horsemen turned to look at the pug. Agro was sitting on a bar stool, snorting into a bowl of pork scratchings. His face was the expression of a creature who believed the universe existed solely to provide him snacks. Death lifted him gently. Agro, my dear boy, you're going to stay with the unicorns. Agro snorted in a way that suggested he found this arrangement beneath him. War slapped the table. Right, holiday time. Pestilence sneezed, which caused a nearby fern to wilt. Famine folded the travel brochure into a neat square. Death tucked Agro's favourite snacks into a small skull-shaped bag. They stepped outside the pub, where Trevor the dragon was still unconscious in the beer garden, occasionally twitching in a dream about sheep. War looked at him. Should we do something about that? Death shook his head. We're on holiday. And with that, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse climbed onto their spectral steeds, who were already wearing sunglasses and floral garlands, and rode off toward the airport via the unicorn's place.